the secret spiritual method that no one must know. Welcome to Spirita Vivo. Stephen Greer made a sensational statement some time ago that a certain spiritual method should be kept secret by governments because people who master this method can gain access to information and knowledge that they are not allowed to know. What is there to this rumor, and why can a spiritual method be so powerful?
In today's podcast, we want to examine the theories of Dr. Stephen Greer, a U.S. physician and spiritual author whose research includes human consciousness. One of the theories that Dr. Greer talks about, which we will look at below, is said to be so secret that even governments don't want you to know about it. Because using this methodology is not supposed to be in the interest of intelligence agencies. You could use this method to obtain the information. They don't want you to know. Our podcast also examines the fact that the U.S. government has used this method, and probably still does. More on that later. We talk about Dr. Greer's thesis of non-locality, a theory that can be used through a method called remote viewing. We want to shed light on this concept, and at the end of today's podcast, you can decide whether this thesis makes sense, or at least the existence of such a way of looking at things cannot be ruled out. Dr. Greer begins with the question: how is it that you have a crystal clear, colorful dream during dream time, and what occurs in that dream happens the next day, the next week, the next month, or 10 years later? How can this happen? Think about it. Ritam Hara Pragya. This is the level where everything can be known, past, present, future. That is a term from the yogic tradition, especially Raja Yoga, which means that the mind is fully concentrated and in union with cosmic consciousness. When a person's consciousness is aligned with this universal consciousness, the person reaches the state of Ritampara, the highest state of consciousness and enlightenment. If one has reached this highest earthly level of consciousness, then the access to everything that was, what is, and what will ever open, and with it, the entrance to the source of unlimited information. It is said to be granted to only a handful of people on Earth, and humanity is generally said to know nothing about it. Let's get straight to some techniques to enter this state. First, when implementing these techniques, it is a hindrance, but most people think too much about whether it will work. And ultimately, they don't believe they can do it either, so they program themselves for failure. So we want to hit the reset button, program ourselves for success, and that we can do it. It is a technique, a skill that anyone can learn. It is the key to understanding the psychological and even physical dynamics of consciousness and non-locality, and how you can manifest. The ability to be in spirit in a distant place or time in the future is possible through regular practice. If you understand the science and fundamental knowledge of consciousness, it is nature. Every human being is not only what they think about themselves. By its existence, every human being is trapped within the framework of its physical form, that is, its body. But the truth is, at this moment, every person is in their place, in consciousness, with every point in space connected. And that includes the now, but also going back to the past, and in the future, that is, seeing far into the future. Unfortunately, this realization has been relegated to mysticism, and many think it takes a lot of experience. This belief is harmful, and many church and spiritual leaders have propagated this lie. You don't have to be in an esoteric aesthetic environment to have this experience or to develop it. So this is something that we need to move past slowly. Because if you have a different understanding of who and what you are, and are a conscious being that is capable of doing this, then you can connect to the consciousness field beyond space and time. The reason the intelligence agency's deeper elements do not want the public to know about this is, first, because it is an extremely efficient spycraft that they do not want others to have. Secondly, they know that if people understood the power of consciousness, they could completely change the world's direction. You can see any place and you can see any point in time. You must understand, this is your innate ability as a higher intelligent platform. Once we reach a critical mass of intelligence and consciousness, we can understand this and routinely see remote and faraway places. Those who are critical should remember that there is science, objective knowledge, and intellect. Beyond that, there is consciousness which can sense, feel, and know. And if you develop this ability, your life will change seriously. Let's move on to remote viewing. Now, the first experiment. You can do it at home. If you are in a group of 3 or 4 people, a person takes a box or a basket, leaves the room, and puts any object in it. And the others have no idea what is in the container. Step 1. Go into the quiet state of meditation and forget about the object. Forget about aiming at it. Just stay with the process of the awake mind. And do the meditation technique with ease of breathing the mantra or whatever inspires you. And when you're in a deep, calm state, we come to step 2. Instead of guessing what's in the box, just let your mind rest on it. Now ask yourself what it is. Just let your mind rest on it and ask yourself what is inside. You may see it. You may get the word for it. You may get some aspect of it. The key is not to intellectualize or guess at it like some sleight of hand. But that's what most people do. They turn their minds and try to guess it. A second experiment could be similar. A picture or drawing is chosen for you, of which you have no information about what is on it. After bringing yourself into a deeply relaxed state, establish a mental connection with the picture, just as you did with the object in the box. Try to get information about the image, about details like shapes, colors, and patterns. Again, let your mind rest on the image you cannot see. And also, in this way, get clues about emotions and moods associated with the image. So you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Do I feel that, or do I assume that? Well, you may not know at first because your mind can start pulling in all kinds of things. The other thing you must understand is that what the mind does is the trick here, and that's its real art and science. When you start sensing something, you will get an accurate, objectively true distant view, a data point, and then the mind comes into play. The mind starts thinking, skips the process of perceiving and knowing what it is, and fills in the gaps in your memory bank. How can we recognize and find out the difference? Through practice. Practice and constant practice. Because the more you practice it, the more you'll recognize when you get that feeling about it and when you don't. If you do it often enough, this technique, like just with the box or the drawing or something else that you don't know what it is, you'll start knowing how it feels in your heart and gut when it's accurate. And you'll know how it feels when it was just something that your mind began to confabulate and dream up. That is how you proceed when you go to bed. You almost fall asleep, not quite yet, then take a journal. Put something next to your bed and start confirming that you can have lucid dreams. Be aware of your dreams. You can travel to places and know things in that state. You can start practicing this every night, and as you do it, it will become more and more accurate. If you gently intend it, I have found that you will be in a very deep, relaxed state or even take a nap. When you go in and out of the dream state, the sleep state, or the quiet, meditative state to know something, it's an intention, and then relax and let it flow into you and get out of the way of your intellect. So, If you get your intellect and ego out of the way, it will flow in that way. The other thing is, when you wake up, you come out of sleep into the waking state, but you're in this sleepy, half-awake, half-asleep state, but you're rested at that point. The transition between dreaming and sleeping and being awake. When you are relaxed, you intend to know something, see something, and get a problem solved. Then do it. You will be amazed at how accurately you will receive this information. Practice remote viewing every day, as often as you can. Be in a mindful state. Develop this state at least 2 or 3 times a day. This practice of deep, quiet meditation, the practice of remote viewing, and you will be amazed at how quickly you get the desired results. Finally, a few interesting facts. Have you ever heard of coordinate remote viewing? CRV. It is a method of remote viewing developed by the U.S. government in the 1970s to gather information about secret locations, people, or events. Ingo Swann and Harold Puthoff developed it as part of the U.S. government's secret remote viewing program called the Stargate Project. In the CRV method, the remote viewer is given a coordinate or number associated with a specific location or event. This coordinate can come from random number generation or someone with information about the location or event. The remote viewer then uses this coordinate as a focus or anchor point to connect to and gather information about the location or event. In the CRV process, the remote viewer is brought into a state of relaxed attention and receptivity to gather information step by step. These steps are, for example, drawing a sketch or diagram to gather impressions about the environment. In addition, identifying features or objects, capturing emotions or feelings associated with the target, and gathering information about past, present, or future events. So much for the CRV method. In summary, the theory of non-locality states that certain phenomena or events are not tied to a particular place or time. Strangely enough, they are interconnected and influence each other, regardless of how far apart they are or when they occur. By the way, a good example of this is the phenomenon of quantum entanglement, where 2 particles communicate with each other so that actions on one particle immediately affect the actions of the other particle. And the incredible thing is, the 2 particles communicate with each other, regardless of how far apart they are. Hard to imagine. Quantum physics has confirmed this through various experiments and still has no explanation. Scientists call this phenomenon spooky action at a distance. Other governments indirectly confirm Dr. Greer's research in this area as they implement the concept, and quantum physics cannot yet explain certain phenomena. All these should encourage us to realize our full potential, for we are more than we can be. Our minds, connected to the infinity of the universe, can understand and create things we never thought possible. If today's podcast inspired you, feel free to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to never miss a new episode. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you, and see you soon on our channel.